As part of the most recent Nintendo Direct, we got a surprise drop of a demo along with a hard release date for one of my most anticipated games of the year, Sea of Stars. Now, if you haven't looked into this game before, the really basic pitch here is that this is an RPG coming from Sabotage Studio, whose previous game was The Messenger, a 2D platformer, and the goal in their design is to take a lot of influence from some of the really big retro titles and put their own spin on it and make a more modernized version of it. So whereas The Messenger was a 2D platformer based on a lot of ninja games, Sea of Stars is inspired by a lot of SNES era JRPGs. The two that really stand out to me the most are Super Mario RPG and Chrono Trigger. And while the game is slated to come out on PlayStation, PC, as well as Nintendo Switch, the demo is currently a Nintendo Switch exclusive. I played through it just last night, as well as again this morning. It takes about roughly an hour and a half. You could definitely get through it faster if you're just kind of blitzing through it. You can also play it a lot longer if you end up just wanting to, redo segments a bunch, replay it, poke and prod at some of the little hidden bits you can find. And I loved absolutely every minute of it. This is a very quick slice of the game that just showcases a couple different main things. I'm not really going to talk too much about story, and in fact the demo itself really goes out of its way to try and make sure that you don't get that much context and plot. There's a couple little things you're going to learn here and there, but overall really tries to keep most of it a secret and surprise for now, with even some dialogue edited to reflect this fact in a pretty funny way. What the demo does give you a very heavy taste of, though, is the combat, exploration mechanics, and a couple little different side mini-game type stuff you can do. The first thing I really want to focus on is the game's combat. Now, being inspired by SNES era JRPGs, there's of course a focus on party turn-based combat. And again, the two games that I think really show a lot of very clear influence here are Chrono Trigger and Super Mario RPG. Now, on the Chrono Trigger side of things, one of the immediate things you'll notice is the fact that there are no random encounters. Enemies are actually seen on the main map, and when you run into them, you get into a battle stance right there. But another aspect that's super important is positioning. Certain moves hit enemies that are grouped close together or lined up in a certain way, and there are even some moves in this game that allow you to help set up those situations. For instance, Garl has a move where he'll pick up an enemy and throw him, putting him next to another enemy so that if you use Zale Sunball, you're now going to hit more guys all at once, really maximizing your damage. Also inspired by Chrono Trigger, there are combo moves where when you have certain party members together, there are special moves they can perform. However, instead of it just being a thing that you can do freely as long as both characters have MP, this is instead something where you actually build up a combo meter by fighting enemies, and that unlocks special combo points that can be used for using these more powerful moves. Now, if you're wondering where Mario RPG comes in all of this, timed hits. Regular attacks can do a larger combo if you time a hit correctly, pressing at the same time. You can reduce damage from enemy attacks by pressing the attack button at the right time when they're going to strike you, and many of the character's special moves can be enhanced by making use of proper timing by holding a button down and releasing at the right moment, or even timing the Moonerang to reflect it back and forth, allowing for some really high combo numbers to deal a ton of damage. I've only been able to get it to go so long, but I've already seen a few people post online some incredibly timed hits for just having it go on and on and on, wiping out all enemies. One other Mario RPG element that finds its way in here is the way that level ups work. Once you get enough XP, the entire party levels up together, and while numerous stats will go up as part of leveling up, you also get to pick a specific bonus you want to have, so you can lightly focus characters in different ways, whether you want to keep buffing their defenses, choosing to up attack, increase their health, so on and so forth. One thing I found really interesting about the combat system is how MP is retuned compared to a lot of other RPGs. Generally speaking, in a lot of JRPGs, characters will have so much MP, and then you can just use it whenever you want and use items to recover it. Well, that's still the case in Sea of Stars. Characters generally have not that much MP relative to how much their abilities cost, but they also regenerate it by doing regular attacks. And so there's kind of this flow you're meant to have of, yeah, use special attacks right up front if you have max MP, and then rely on other attacks if you have to get it charged back up. On top of all these mechanics, there's actually even more unique ones worth talking about. I think the last two for combat specifically are breaking enemy attacks and boosting your own attacks. For breaking enemy attacks, when enemies are charging certain more powerful special moves, they'll have a little picture above them of different damage types. And if you can hit those damage types before the enemy acts, you're able to prevent them from using that particularly powerful attack. This really encourages you to prioritize using certain characters, when to save certain abilities, because some of them allow you to hit multiple times and break more locks when necessary. What's nice about this is that failing to break the attack isn't some kind of like horrendous game over kind of situation. The enemy just gets off a particularly strong move that you can usually still survive, but might give you a little bit of a headache. But on top of being able to stop this move, if you succeed in breaking the attack, you also get a bigger boost to your combo points, allowing you to do some of those fancier big combo attacks. Another interesting mechanic is being able to boost moves. Basically, as you attack enemies, you'll see these little sparkly bits fall down and float around the stage. Those can be absorbed by a character to increase the impact of whatever move they're going to do next, whether that's a regular attack or a major special move that you want to really see big numbers on. And so you can see what I mean when I say that there's a lot of different mechanics going on, some that we've seen in some past games, others that are their own unique spin. Obviously, everything is tuned for its own style, but most of them I think are pretty easy and friendly to learn. Once you get it all down, there's just this really interesting dynamic flow to combat that is a little more complex than just simply attacking enemies, which you can still do if you just want to not think too hard, but you are heavily rewarded for taking advantage of all these additional mechanics. Another big aspect of the game is exploration. When you're exploring dungeons or getting through certain areas, there are some light platforming mechanics you can engage with, being able to climb up walls, jump across pits. It's all stuff that is ultimately guided paths that you can follow, but it's much more dynamic and interesting looking than what some previous RPGs in the same style have had to offer before. One particular thing I really like is how the use of camera and exploration can help bring certain things to your attention. For instance, at the very, very beginning of the demo, there is an area where if you pursue some obvious paths, you'll notice, oh, there's a cave up in this corner. I didn't see the path on how to get there. And if you go back up and backtrack, you can now find this actual little climbing path that you may have noticed at the very beginning, but didn't really stand out super strongly. But because you saw that cave while exploring elsewhere, it gave you a reason to want to really double check the area, which is the kind of stuff that I absolutely eat up. Exploration also consists of some light puzzle-solving mechanics. There's things like having to shove blocks around, hitting switches in a certain order, all your good classic SNES-era dungeon-style puzzles. One thing that's tied to both exploration and combat that I thought was a neat twist is the game's approach to healing items. Instead of the kind of genre tradition of, you just go to the store and buy some healing potions, instead, all your healing items are themed as food that you can eat. There's a limit to how many food items you can hold at one time, not in terms of individual items, but just actual total of different food items. And you can either buy them from stores or craft them yourselves by finding ingredients, by finding things like harvesting points, or even engaging in some mini games like fishing. This makes healing items not as money dependent, which is a really nice touch, but at the same time, you're not allowed to work your way towards stocking 99 of each item. So there's a certain strategic limit still to what you can have around and even what type of healing items you want to have on hand, whether that's carrying a couple full party heals, a couple single target heals that are more powerful, or also having items that recover MP. Speaking of the game's difficulty, there's no way to actually pick settings in the traditional manner where it's like, oh, I want to play easy, normal, or hard, but instead the game uses a relic system where you can find certain items, some are given to you, some can be purchased from shops, that modify the way the game works, either by giving a lot of generous boosts to the party, like the Storyteller relic, which gives everyone more health and recovers a lot of it after each fight, or ones that can add a risk-reward factor by making things a lot more difficult, but giving you ways to also deal even more damage. There are some of these in the demo. How you get those and what exactly they do, though, I'm going to leave as a surprise for anyone that chooses to play this, because it's really cool. So pretty clearly, I have enjoyed and love all the mechanical bits that have been introduced in this demo. Something else though really worth talking about is just how beautiful and great it sounds. The majority of the soundtrack is done by Rainbow Dragon Eyes, who also did all the music for The Messenger, and his stuff is fantastic. It just sounds great. But on top of that, there are also going to be some bonus tracks in the game that are composed by Yasunori Mitsuda, probably most popularly known for Chrono Trigger and a bunch of other JRPG soundtracks. And the demo actually does give you a way to listen to that track specifically and just get a taste of what that other style is going to sound like. As for the visuals, I feel like there's not a whole lot I have to say here. If you can just take a look at the gameplay that's been shown so far, as well as the exploration, just the environmental details, the animations for attacks, characters' battle stances, all of it is just this wonderful balance of an old school retro look, but cleaned up and upgraded in a way that obviously systems at the time could not do. So far, this has been obviously a lot of heavy praise because I do think the demo is that good. I do have some light complaints that I think are worth bringing up real quick. For instance, some of the explanations or ways that some mechanics work in the game aren't made entirely clear right away. For instance, the fishing minigame, it's really important that you hit specifically hard left or hard right. A lot of fishing minigames have programmed me to want to hold back sometimes or do I diagonal. Not the case here. The demo also doesn't really explain how downed characters work and how they're able to come back. And I think really my biggest and at the same time really minor complaint, overworld travel is a little on the slow side. Compared to how fast you move when running through dungeons or exploring town areas, it just feels a little extra sluggish. I think it's really meant to impart that feeling of how overworld maps were on some older games, and perhaps maybe it's usually a small enough segment that it's not that big of a deal, but that was just one thing that did lightly bother me while playing it. Now, of course, this is a demo version of the game, and it does also clarify right away that, hey, a lot of this is subject to change. There's probably going to be some balance changes, some things might change how they work a little bit. I'm really interested in seeing what actually changes in the final version of the game, which we're about half a year away from. It's coming out on August 29th. Just looking at a lot of the early gameplay stuff and tidbits that have been released since the game was kickstarted, I already knew I was interested in it, but this demo really solidifies my excitement for this game. And there's honestly a very legitimate chance that if this demo is really representative of the quality of the final game, on top of seeing how a lot of the writing and story gets delivered, this could end up being my game of the year. I enjoyed the demo that much. Again, the game is currently slated for coming out on PlayStation 4, PC, and Nintendo Switch. The demo is available on Switch, but you can't play it on the other platforms just yet. We'll see if maybe that gets a delayed release there potentially sometime. Even if you've watched this video all the way through and you feel like you got an idea for the game already, I really recommend actually playing it firsthand if you have the option to, because it's awesome. So those are some thoughts and impressions about the Sea of Stars demo. Thank you so much, guys, for watching this video. This is the second one on the new channel, and to be honest, I'm just really enjoying the opportunity to talk more about actual in-depth game stuff, and I apparently picked a really good month to do that because there was so much going on for games that I'm personally excited about. So thanks for checking it out. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't yet, and I will see you guys later.